welcome back to In the House podcast with
Jenny Woon
and Toni Singh. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today's topic, before we get into it, I want to know what's going on with you. How are you? Anything new going on in life? Real estate, it's a crazy market.
I'm doing well. My team's doing well. Yesterday, I lost out on a multiple offer.
Me too yesterday.
I was representing a buyer and they've been waiting for a townhome to come up in their complex for over a year.
Oh.
I mean, they're not too much, they're very specific on what they want. So I'm not spending too much time with them anyways, looking for around the city. But they had their ducks in a row for this one home. For this specific square footage, and that property sold $172,000 over asking.
Where was the property located approximately?
Sunstone in Delta.
Wow. Yeah, it's so nuts out there right now.
So for 2,300 square feet, sold for 1.121.
Wow.
For a 3-bedroom.
That's a big price.
That is. It's record hitting.
Yeah. Have you noticed that, I guess, further out from the city centers, like in places like Delta, Ladner, Fraser Valley, Maple Ridge, Pitt Meadows, where areas basically where you get a little bit more space. For your dollar. Have you noticed that for any of your clients going out that way, it's just insanely crazy, busy, and each sale after the next one has been higher?
So the ones that are selling their condo either in Coquitlam, and in the Tri-Cities, in Burnaby, who do want to move out to the Pitt Meadows, Maple Ridge area, I pass those groups on to my team who live out in the Tri-Cities. And I am in the same group chat with them and I'm listening in and they're not winning on bids.
Yeah.
And they're trying, but they're not giving up because they want the space. They have a family that they need to put a roof over. And yeah, there's a lot of activity out there.
I mean, yeah.
So I wonder if there's going to be more listings coming out.
Yeah.
It's already mid-March.
Well, I think there's a few things. I think we might start to see an increase in supply for sure, because supply inventories are very low, which is also why you see that upward pricing. And then also there's the changes with the mortgage rates and everything, right? Like fix has gone up. So I guess the buyers out there that are currently pre-qualified, if they need a mortgage, they're sharp and ready to buy. I wrote an offer last night too. I was working till very late. We wrote $75,000 above the most recent sale.
Oh, okay.
Not even the list price, right? Because the list price is not as important, but above the most recent sale. And I had that contract as tight as possible. We had a 2-day subject because my guys couldn't go subject free.
Yeah.
Just one subject for inspection.
Okay.
And we definitely lost it, but we just got beaten out. I think we were in second position.
Okay.
It sold last night. Bank drafts due today. So more than 75K above, and it'll be the next record sale, I guess, that'll be posted for Coquitlam.
So what do you think is going to happen for the rest of the year? Like if, let's just say you have a seller that wants to, they're asking you, should I list now or should I wait, maybe bank a little bit more money?
It's a great question. I also think it comes down to what they're individually trying to achieve, though. It can be risky right now if certain people are trying to make a move into a busier market. So, for example, townhouses and detached, especially the further out that you go, very active. I mean, in some places, you're competing against 40 different buyers. And there's a good chance then that a bunch of those people competing are going to have subject-free offers, right? Then it's just a matter then on price and who's going to pay the most and no subjects.
Right.
So I think it does depend on the individual clients in terms of where they're relocating to and why. A concern that I have for some of my clients is if it's really close for them to scale up, I want to say move up into a larger home, is whether or not they'd actually be able or successful to purchase that next home. So they need to have a plan A and a plan B, I almost feel, before listing their property. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm very optimistic. I feel like the prices will remain steady or increase as we are unfolding throughout the year. And right now, if you put an offer in, it's really just a wild card of whether or not you're going to get the home and guessing a price.
Yeah.
So if you want to wait to purchase at closer to the fall, then I think the prices will be a little bit more of just predictable. Because you have stats and you have comparables to use. And so then we're just not an agent who says, well, whatever you think you want to pay, put your best foot forward.
That's basically what's happening right now.
Versus in the fall, these are the comps. We're doing our job by providing the comps. This is what the market
is
paid for it. And so based on this, let's use this as a comp.
Yeah, no, I'd have to agree. I think that the rest of the year is going to be extremely busy still. I'm looking forward to more of a slightly more balanced market rather than the one that we're currently having. And I think if you're speaking to any top producers out there as well, they're feeling the same way. A little bit calmer would be nice.
I do feel the investor market will come back because buyer affordability is now even further, which means that there's going to be more renters. And so I think investors may come back into the picture. And there are some really good pre-sale offerings out there right now. I'm not going to say deals, but there's quite a bit in the pipeline for all these developers that held back last year.
Yeah.
And there's going to be some really good buildings to invest in. And so what that means is buying a pre-sale home, putting a small deposit down and waiting for that equity to grow, but also affordability has been an issue for a very long time and now is even a bigger issue. And I think those vacant homes will be filled with renters.
Yeah, that's a great comment. I guess that leads us into our current episode for today.
Yes.
Which is the top mistakes that realtors make when listing property.
That's a very good topic for us to introduce.
Especially given this market, right?
Yeah.
When it's such a fast-paced market.
Yeah. Mistakes can happen. And maybe you're just going into like bad habits or cutting corners. But our job, providing great customer service and doing our due diligence remains the same.
Absolutely. So I guess let's get right into it. It's kind of, you hit it right on the nail on the head there. I think that the first mistake I've seen people make when listing homes, especially in this market, is not completing their due diligence prior to listing the property.
Okay.
And that can take a variety of different shapes and forms. Okay. So I want to go into it a little bit further. I would say that can translate into not having the correct documents about the property in order to list it, not arranging pictures, floor plans, marketing materials, all of those things ahead of time, and also not having a proper system in terms of getting all of the relevant information about that property to the buyer's agents who are showing that home to their buyers.
Okay, so let's break it down first in terms of the paperwork and providing a proper CMA for the property.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what are some of the things that an agent needs to do in preparation of a home evaluation or going into a listing appointment?
Sorry, ask the question again.
What's some common mistakes realtors make when they are providing a CMA or a comparative market analysis?
That's a great question. I guess for today, and it's always, you have to relate this into the current market. I think for today, one of the challenges listing realtors experience is that the data available is not necessarily, so the data available for recent sales is not actually accurate. Because the market is moving so fast that you could still have active listings showing up in Paragon that are actually sold, but you're not actually seeing the sales price. So there's a little bit of a lag there. And in those scenarios, it's really important when you're pricing property to take into account that market. So if the last recent sales showing up is from a week and a half ago, it's probably sold.
Sold, right?
Okay, it's not inventory that's on the market. And the CMA actually needs to be, you have to make adjustments for it, but I would say, 2 to 5% above and sometimes 10% above where the data is actually showing up in the system.
So without having to guess or make any assumptions,
Yeah.
first thing is call the listing agent who has that property
We do
to
do that.
confirm whether or not it's sold and for how much. And secondly, get your paperwork in as soon as there's an accepted offer to your brokerage so that when it gets reported sold, it expedites that process to the board.
For sure. I mean, actually, we've been reporting sales right away as well because it doesn't make sense for us not to report it. If the property is sold, we don't want to have that time of so many questions and everything coming in. It's sold. We should release the price. But I also know that the board is a little bit delayed right now.
Oh, they're behind.
So even if you submit the sales report, and it makes sense, right? There's a lot of sales that are happening and they almost can't keep up.
One thing I want to add is there's been a number of complaints of people deleting the remarks and data entry information, and as well deleting photos.
Yeah.
So they're always encouraging to keep those photos up and keep the information as accurate and present as possible, just because it'll help others evaluate homes.
That's actually common though. Because if you think about it, it does contain personal information.
It does. And for photos, especially when I am very aware that it does contain, the content that's inside the home. So I tend to delete certain photos.
Okay,
but
like
also
ones that are private?
Private, yeah, that should remain private. Is because what if they're still living in their home for 6 months, 4 months or something, and maybe some of their personal stuff's in those photos. But for the most part, I try to make sure that it's integral, keeps integrity for other agents to use.
Okay, that's interesting. I haven't heard about complaints about it per se, but it's not mandated, so that would be interesting.
It's not mandated, but it's mentioned all the time. You should be keeping that information alive on the listing.
Okay. All right. Well, there, you heard it here. Any other points in regards to the CMA when listing the property?
Don't copy information from the previous listing.
I don't copy the information, but it does depend. So if we're trying to onboard a property and you have to submit the MLS data input form, we might, if we don't have the measurements in yet and verification of some of the information, we might go off of what was there previously, but we always change it. Right. So that means that the information can change. We update it as soon as possible. But until I get clarification or verification, I guess, on some of the items in regards to the property, sometimes I do use the original one, and then we change everything after to reflect, I guess, the most accurate information.
Up-to-date information, because perhaps they've done some renovations, perhaps they've added some additions to the home. Who knows what has changed.
Yeah, so it's kind of a ballpark. But yeah, of course, always double checking that after the fact. Does your team do something similar? Because sometimes you might not have all the measurements yet.
No, but we do our own measurements. Like we have professional and measuring companies to come in and do their own measurements accurately, so that we're not having to deal with measuring tapes across a large room or anything like that.
That's what I mean. So the time lag from when the company actually gets it to you, though, from when the listing is live, we try and time it properly, but sometimes it doesn't work out.
We're bringing them in way
a week
before.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So how much does that cost? So let's kind of tell our listeners
Sure.
what kind of expectations they should be paying for a measuring company. I usually see it at between 9 to 10 cents a square foot.
Well, I think I don't actually know, because for a smaller home, there's normally the base price for the measurements, call it $100, something around there, average. And then plus it would be an additional 7 to 9 cents a square foot after a certain size.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you like to measure garage and patios as well?
Yeah, but we don't include them in the, I like to have them measured so that people know how large they are, but it's not included in the overall square footage.
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. How about title search and any other supporting documents in preparation of the CMA?
So Our team orders the title search prior to the listing appointment to make sure that we're actually dealing with the registered owners on title. I think it's really important, especially for detached, because you could have an easement or statutory right-of-way or a covenant that will affect the value of the land. So that's significant. Do you guys ever use Terra Firma Review?
No.
Okay, they're really great because it means then that, when there's charges that come up on title, sometimes they're not written in a way that is understandable and clear for a layman, right? So you could get a legal opinion on that. It's written in legal jargon, especially for some of them that were done, in the early 1900s.
Well, I had one I remember like 1910, 1920.
Yeah.
And there was like a $10 exchange for a sidewalk or something like that.
Oh, yeah, that happens sometimes.
Yeah. And you can barely read the document.
Can't.
But
because it's on microfiche.
But it follows the sale every time. So it's been passed on, tenfold of.
Have you ever had it happen before where somebody's contacted you to list a property, and then when you take their names and you double check the title, one of them's actually not qualified to make a decision about listing the property? Have you ever had that happen?
Qualified to make a decision?
Because they're not the owner.
Oh, okay. Yes.
I should have been more clear.
So what happened?
Well, I knew beforehand.
Okay.
Because I ordered the title beforehand, so the conversation changed. The conversation was, may I please speak with the registered owner of the home so that A, we can list the property if they would like to sell it, or B, end the conversation. If they're not qualified to sign off on it, then you wouldn't be meeting with them.
How about if someone was actually approaching expired listings or door knocking or for sale by owners? Are you doing all this due diligence because you've done the door knocking before? How much research are you actually doing before you're knocking on these doors?
That's a good question. That's a great question.
At all? Like, are you just trying to get that first meeting, but that it's primarily just an appointment that you're trying to get?
There's a few things. Obviously, if you're selling real estate full-time, you'll have a general idea about what the homes are selling for, given its true attributes. But that being said, to answer your question fully, I'm not completing a full CMA beforehand. The intention of door knocking is to see if someone would like to sell their home and if they're motivated to do so. So I would say the first thing is, if you're contacting somebody like an expired or a FSBO, one, you want to make sure that they still would like to sell their home. If that's a yes, then you would set an appointment for later that week or even later in the evening, right, to go over what the CMA in terms of what their property is currently worth, and then see if it would be a good fit in working together.
Okay. Okay. When you're preparing for a CMA, what extent are you going to in preparation for going into that appointment? So are you spending money at all in terms of a title search? How much are you spending on that? Are you looking at survey lots, going to the city to just verify all this information? So should you be prepared with all that information up front?
I'll tell you what I do. I don't know if it's the quote unquote right way or most efficient way to do it. What I typically will do is, so the major investigations about a property, now this varies across property type. Now, that being said, we do complete the initial due diligence stages. So for example, I might place a call to the city or go on bad maps or whatever it is to make sure that there's no outstanding permits that might affect the saleability of the property. But in terms of completing due diligence, a lot of that is done after the listing agreement signed. So the major things that would affect value, for example, dealing with the registered owners, is there something against the title that would affect the value of the property? Double checking on lot size, double checking the strata documents, those kinds of things. If it's a strata, I can't double check the strata documents until after the listing agreement is signed. Right? So it kind of depends. There's the initial phase of due diligence. And then there's the secondary part after the agreement signed. What does your team do in regards to that? How much due diligence are you doing beforehand?
I wouldn't say we're pulling title. We would probably pull title at the time of right before signing.
Yeah.
But prior, like getting into that meeting, we're just looking at our comps. We're looking at zoning. We're looking at we're asking questions like their motivation and what their expectations are on price. So I think that's one of the biggest things is having a kind of conversation of over the phone or by email or however the first contact was. When do you want to sell, and how much do you think your home is worth? Because then you are prepared going into the conversation of whether or not you're actually aligned.
Yeah, you're talking about pre-qualification right now.
Yeah. So maybe that's later on in the conversation, but that's just some of the things that in preparation of providing our evaluation.
So I have a question, because we've had a lot of changes in the real estate industry in Vancouver and British Columbia. When you're having these conversations with a potential seller about price and motivation, are you guys getting the disclosure of representation and trading services signed first?
Very good question, and I may get in trouble.
Because the thing,
which we should be. So we should be getting the dirt, in short form, the dirt signed. So there's a couple of approaches. So firstly is confirming whether or not they're talking to any other agents.
Okay.
That's one. And if they are, or if they have signed any paperwork, be respectful of not really overstepping on anybody else's work already. And I'm very upfront with that. I said, you know what? My respect for others in the industry first comes first and foremost. So if you are looking for advice or a second opinion and you've already signed something, I'm not going to be intervening in that. So that's where I'm very honest in that way.
Yeah, no, we definitely are too. I follow, I want to say an 8 to 10 step questionnaire though, before we take a client on as a seller. And that questionnaire does delve into questions about what their expectations are on price and what their motivations are for selling. It is very helpful because, contrary to popular belief, we don't work with all sellers that are out there. Just because someone wants to sell their home doesn't mean that I'm going to take them on as a client. And you, I think, said it perfectly. If there's no alignment there, it's probably not the best fit.
Right. Chemistry, alignment, expectations are their expectations realistic?
Yeah, I mean, right now in an upward market, it's harder to define that, right? Because, like we mentioned, each and every sale that's reported in some areas is a little bit higher than the next, higher than the next, higher than the next. So because the market is fluid, obviously, yeah, there's going to be a range that it appears as though the property can sell for successfully today. I think a better way to answer it is if the seller's expectation is really far out of the current range, even in an upward market, and let's say they're wanting 15 to 20% higher than where it looks like that range is, I wouldn't be working with that person.
Yeah. And I want to add, because I know we're talking a lot of things that are tangible and information driven, but a lot of it also is this feeling that you get. The last month, I've turned down at least 3 offerings, and I felt so good about it. You know how you and we always talk about wealth. Wealth is being able to pick and choose who we want to work with, about freedom, about alignment, about harmony, work and life balance. And so turning down these offerings, I just felt like
a weight
on top of this world. You know what? They need me more than I need them.
So question, and just for clarification for people that are listening, when you say offering, what specifically do you mean?
So one of the emails was, you know what? We're interviewing 20 realtors. We want a deal. We're not ready to buy now. We're just checking out the market. I said, you know what? I'm not the right realtor for you.
Oh, yeah, for sure. That'd feel amazing.
Second, and that was a referral, and I appreciated that referral. I still gave
Of course.
the person who provided the referral a mini gift for mentioning my name, but that particular couple just wasn't going to work with me. Another offering was someone who approached me to do an evaluation on a land assembly.
Yeah, those are tough right now
And
too.
those are tough right now because maybe you're working with 3 to 5 landowners, and there's guaranteed always one of that 5 or 3 that want way more money than the rest of the owners.
They'd be in the 10 to 20% range above the range.
And I don't know why they would expect that, because at the end of the day, the builder and the developer just wants the land. They don't want the house.
That comes down to motivation, though. Those people are probably not motivated to sell their home.
Their neighbors are, but not that one. The one that happens to be in the middle always is the one that wants more money. So, this is more of a people management. It's more personality management, and I just don't have time for that.
Okay.
So anyways, moving on. This is kind of my my rant.
I was going to say, actually, that segues into another great mistake that some realtors will make when listing property is I want to say, how would I define it? I want to say poor communication with the clients from start to finish. So start being the offering or possibility of working together and having those initial preliminary conversations all the way to signing the listing contract. And then fast forward, marketing, sales, negotiating the contract, and then obviously completion. It's quite a process. Yes.
So what are some of the mistakes, any specific mistakes that you've seen happen?
I have. It relates directly to pricing property. So for example, if a seller, and it's a valid question, but a seller might ask you, what do you think it's worth? They're just asking your opinion, right? You're the professional. If the answer is, I think you can get, or I think it's worth $3.5 to $3.8 million, there's a slight shift in that communication, which would make it a lot better for the realtor.
Right.
And it's not about, I think. The market is saying that your property is currently within this range. So a mistake is, let me be clear then. So when a realtor says, I think, it's more so taking ownership and controlling the market, which realtors cannot do. We never do that. The market dictates the price.
Right.
The price is negotiated between the seller and the buyer. So when we look at the ranges, it's based in the data, and you might include a slight adjustment for the current market. In a downward market, you'd adjust down. In an upward market, you can adjust slightly up. But this relates directly to communication with the clients, because it's almost as though if you say, I think it's worth, they put that on you. Like you said that what happens then if you said that? It's an upward market and you're listed for sale and the market changes. Because the market is fluid and does change.
Right.
Nothing lasts forever.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Totally.
Wonderful.
Actually, I had a really good question from a potential buyer/seller on Zoom yesterday. We evaluated their townhome at around $830,000 to $840,000. And they're like, well, should we be listing at $799,000?
Okay.
So what would you do in that scenario? In this type of a market, is it a good idea to list at $799,000 and when it should be probably most likely selling around the $850,000 mark? Or would you list it closer to where it should sell, like at $849,000, for example?
This is a wonderful question, and it depends on what's happening with the clients. What I want to say is, I know that for buyers out there right now, there's a little bit of frustration with the buyers thinking that the properties are listed below market value currently, and it's frustrating for them. That's not always the case. The market is adjusting to what the sales price is going to be anyhow. And what I would say to that is, I've had scenarios where clients are selling a home in order to buy a home. Perhaps they put that offer in on the home and they wanted to win it, and now they need to be sold. If I represent the seller, I'm not going to tell people that my guys are highly motivated to sell the home because I represent the seller. And in that scenario, I would recommend the sharper list price, because the intention is to get the home sold. You will max the value anyhow. You're going to get them the highest value anyhow if you're organized and doing it properly.
Okay.
And in that scenario, yeah, $799.
Okay.
Now, that being said, I also am not a fan of, in this market even too, because it will adjust, I'm not a fan of listing property substantially below where it looks like the current market can bear, like at the $799.
Yeah.
But again, you explain these situations to your clients and they make the decision. We don't make the decision. You can explain the different scenarios to them and they will make the decision.
Right. Yeah.
So don't hold us accountable to that,
Like
guys.
a month ago, a house was listed in North Burnaby for, what was it, like 1.1, 1.2, and it sold for 1.4.
Which are the one on Springer?
There's so many, actually.
Okay, because the one on Springer did that.
Right. So this is where it's a bit tough to, well, it's not tough. I mean, that's obviously smart. They just allow the buyer and the sellers to dictate where it should sell, what the market should sell it. Poor marketing strategy. Some of the mistakes that agents make.
Timing a listing. So for example, I noticed this specifically when I was on the buyer's agent end because we don't do this. And this isn't to throw shade, okay? I make these acknowledgments in a way that it's like, if you do it properly and you time the listing properly, it's better for the seller. So I'm going to give an example. You said poor marketing, right? I think it's a disservice to the seller. And now sometimes things happen, you have to play it by ear. But in a market like we're having right now, if you're signing a listing contract, the listing effective date is Monday, and your marketing and materials are not going to be ready until the Wednesday or the Thursday, it doesn't give the property the proper exposure. You're already behind the 8 ball. It's not a great way, I don't think, to represent the seller clients.
Preparation.
That's
well,
right.
You do have to post photos within 24 hours, at least one photo.
Yes, that's right.
And don't do it from your iPhone.
Why? What happened?
No, I'm just saying, just don't post pictures taken with your iPhone.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I thought you meant because I have the professional photos on my phone through Dropbox, and I can upload them that way through my phone, but you meant don't take them yourself.
Right.
Got it.
On your iPhone.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, unless you are a professional photographer as well on the side. It can happen.
Yeah, we hire people for that because I'm not a professional photographer.
What else are you printing feature sheets, hard copy feature sheets nowadays?
This is a great question. I know that there's a debate about that. I still am. It depends on the property. Now, there's a couple things. Obviously, it's COVID time. Some people are not going to want to take a tangible physical copy of something because they might be concerned about germs. I've noticed, though, that people that are coming through a home that are real buyers, sometimes they want that tangibility in their hands. So we do still do it. Not everybody takes one, but then it's up to them. It's at least the option's there.
So in a feature sheet, 4-pager, what do you include in there? Just so that we can tell our listeners, what are some important information that a brochure should contain?
Okay. A lot of great photos, professional photos, not with your iPhone. Some of the main points about the property that are known at the time of listing. Now, keep in mind, I'll go there later. So the main points about the property with the address and the price, the pictures, we're including a floor plan that's done by a professional company. We are also including a printout of the listing information at the current time of listing. Now, again, that may change as you complete due diligence, and if anything comes to light, that information is going to change. So it's more so just to give the buyer is still in charge of their due diligence. They have to double check everything. It doesn't mean that we don't try and get it accurate, but there are things that happen sometimes which might be discoverable after.
Right.
And then on the back page, I mean, I've seen a lot of other realtors do this. It could be something about your professional service as a realtor. I don't have that on there. I like to maximize everything about the current listing.
Okay.
Yeah, and not make it about us.
But also hand out maybe something separate so that in case there are any buyers that come through that are not represented.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I include walk score and schools.
Oh, that's
and
so important. For sure. People want to know that because not everyone's from the same community, right?
No, exactly. Leaving money on the table. That's a big mistake.
So there's a couple of ways, or there's a couple of times that can happen. One, it can happen when listing the property, or two, it'll happen in the negotiations. We won't talk about the negotiations probably, right? Because the topic is what mistakes realtors make when listing property. But there's a whole bunch of negotiation things, which would be a different episode.
Some of the things that may be missed would be not really calculating what kind of upgrades or permits that adds value into the property.
Yeah, 100%. And I think nowadays too, some people are doing listing appointments virtually. Virtual is great for sure. And we all have to adjust to the current times. However, the quality sometimes, when you're doing those virtual showings, there is an element sometimes that's missed when you're not there in person. So for example, if you're doing a virtual listing appointment, it could actually show up better. I've had that happen on the video. And then if you go in person, once you're actually showing it in person, self-distance with masks on, et cetera, there could be significant wear and tear, or the seams of the renovation might not line up. I mean, those things affect value.
So do you typically recommend for the sellers to fix those themselves prior to the showings?
Yes, but we also balance what's happening in the current market with how long it's going to take them to do it. And if they can't do it and it's something significant, we'll hook them up with the proper tradespeople or professionals to get it done. Because then it's a question of getting it on in a speedy manner. And again, it's partly because us as realtors don't control the market. I can still see that it's going upwards, but I haven't seen any micro changes yet. But eventually that'll probably happen, in which case if you're listing a property, you want to get it on ASAP.
Right. And that comes to the most popular question that we often get asked.
What is it?
Is when is the best time to sell? Because you don't want to leave money on the table.
How would you answer that question? Or how do you answer that question when a seller says, hey, Jenny, when's the best time to sell?
It's, again, case by case. I don't define it
case
through
by case.
August or December, which most agents kind of mention.
No, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous to do that. Sorry, don't get me going on a tangent. I'm not going to go there.
I think everybody wants to hear.
All right, I'm going to go there. Now, here's the other thing too. We're all individuals, right? Realtors, individuals, seller clients, an individual. Everyone has their own motivation for doing things. So I think you said the absolute 100% correct thing. It's going to depend case by case. And also, I don't know why people keep perpetuating these common fallacies about, oh, it's fall, it's a great time to sell my home. Oh, it's spring, I'm going to net more value.
Or the worst is agents are on vacation in August.
Guys and girls, if you look, how do I want to say this? There's no such thing. Are you aware that if you're listing your home in the spring or the fall, you're also most likely competing against more inventory?
Right.
That is significant. People never go there. It's like, oh, yeah, I'm just going to talk about something that maybe I don't know anything about. Just stop for a second.
And in fact, most buyers want to move in before school starts or before
the school year in August.
The season gets busier.
100%. So it does depend case by case, but I'll tell you this. I have sold successfully homes in August, which are right in the summertime, or at Christmas time, right at Christmas time during the holidays, for a greater sales price than they could have achieved in the spring or the fall of that same year.
Right.
So this stuff is bogus. Don't just perpetuate things because you've heard it. It's not true. That's all.
So the answer to that question when a seller asks, when's the best time to sell is, well, let's take a look at your schedule and let's take a look at where you want to move to. So it's case by case.
Yeah, my answer is always, it depends. Client. What would you like to achieve? What would bring you your greatest joy?
I had the exact conversation. I said, what will bring you joy? Because maybe you missed out on $20,000 on trying to get that extra $20,000 on your sale of your home, but you're going to be paying
$75K more, at least.
Down the road. So for that little inconvenience, it's not worth it because at the end of the day, you guys need a bigger home.
So I want to say something to that point, and I want to loop it in with a mistake that listing realtors will make when listing property. It relates directly to poor communication with clients. If you've been in the real estate industry or have been an investor for a while, you'll know, and this is supported in the data. This is supported in the data. I can pull figures and we can put them up on a screen and I will show you the data. It's that if you're purchasing and holding real estate for long term, I've never heard of anyone losing out. Okay. All of our clients, we prime them for that. It's like, yeah, it's an upward market. You're probably going to have to pay 75 to 150K above, depending on what it is. And if that scares you in the short term, if your intention is to be in this property for 7+ years, don't worry about it.
So I'm going to end it with this.
Yeah.
Don't wait to buy property.
My family
Buy
says that all the
property
time.
and wait.
Yeah, that's 100%. My family's lived by that. Family of realtors, and it's true.
Yeah. So I'm going to leave that with our listeners.
Okay.
Thanks, guys, for listening. And next week, we're back with a special guest. And don't forget to subscribe, write a review. Is there anything else you want to add to this episode?
No, definitely not. Thank you for listening. Sorry, I got a little heated there. That'll be interesting to listen to later.
We'll add some extra notes and with some exclamation marks in the captions.
Okay.
Okay.
Have a great day, everyone.
Bye.